All right, we're back. And so we've had fun drawing a few rectangles or squares or whatever. It shouldn't be too bad. It is a little weird that you define the top left corner, but we've been doing it the whole time with the screen, so it's kind of the same concept, right? So it shouldn't be too crazy. And it's even got the same kind of pattern to it as not pattern as the ellipse, except you're just not defining the center point. Okay, so neither here nor there. Let's erase this and let's start going towards what we're talking about. So we have a ball class. Our ball class basically works. It doesn't collide with a paddle, and we don't have a notion of a paddle yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to just say, well, a paddle should be its own class, okay? Because it's like its own object. And now we've got to think about it. There's a few different ways we can do this. We could say something like, well, the computer paddle is going to be different than the user paddle. So maybe they're two different classes. But what we're going to find is that they actually have a lot in common, all right? So let's think about state variables for the paddle, and then that'll give us some intuition as to what is in common between the user paddle and the computer paddle, and what might be different, okay? And this is actually what we do when we try to figure out how we're going to program this and what classes we're going to define, what objects we're going to define. We actually write it out. We don't actually jump into programming. So what I'm doing here is what you will be doing from here on out in this class. When I tell you to create a class, we now know what we did in ball, and we can go back to that and say, oh, well, I can do something similar with whatever, if it's bank account or whatever. So what's the state of a paddle? What if someone's like, I want you to draw this paddle. So we're at some frame number. So sometime in this flip book, someone says, well, I want you to draw the paddles in the right position with the right size. What would you need to know about the paddle? So what do we need to know about the paddle to define the paddle state? Can you see that? Is this thing slowly dying? So I'm going to say a paddle to draw it correctly for a given time through the draw loop. So for a given frame. What are the pieces of information we need, right? So if I was able to draw this paddle like this, okay, what do I need to know about this, right? What is the things that need to be defined? And you can think about, well, with the ball, it was a certain number of things, right? And with the paddle, it's going to be a certain number of things. And some of those things we won't worry about at the beginning, but some of them we will. So how do I draw it at this particular frame? You should at least be able to think of a few variables, state variables, that we can add to paddle. All right, I'll let you think about that for a second, and I'll meet you at the next video where we will start doing our paddle class.